Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call the May 1st, 2025 meeting of the City of Santa Cruz Planning Commission to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Dan?
Here.
Gordon? Kelly?
Here.
Kennedy? McKelvey?
Here.
Thompson?
Here.
Chair Paul Hamas.
Here. And Commissioner Kennedy is absent with notice. Are there any statements of disqualification this evening? Okay, seeing none, we will move to oral communications. Oral communications is the time of the meeting for the public to address the Planning Commission on items that are not on tonight's agenda and are within the scope of our charge. Is there anybody that would like to speak to oral communications tonight? Just one? Okay, come on up, sir.
Good evening, Council. I just want to say I thank you for your service in providing the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Casey Vanden Heuvel. I am the CEO and President of the Monterey Santa Cruz Building and Construction Trades Council. I am also the business representative for the Sheet Metal Workers Local 104, representing the Monterey Bay Area. I wanted to come forward to you tonight to let you know and meet me as well as meet you. So in case you receive any future correspondence from me, you can put a face to those emails. And again, I really want to thank you for your service and dedication to the city. And believe me, reading all of those agendas are definitely time consuming. So thank you. And I'd also like to pass out my business card. So in case you'd like to reach out to me personally. Have a good night.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to oral communications? Okay, seeing none. The next item is approval of minutes, but we are going to push those to the future because they are not ready. So we're going to move to our consent public hearing agenda. Are there any commissioners that would like to pull either items number 2 or number 3? Number 2 is 400 Beach Street, and number 3 is the 2026 through 2030 Capital Investment Program consistency item. Okay, seeing none, we will open the public hearing then. Is there anybody that would like to speak to either 400 Beach Street or the 2026 through 2030 Capital Investment Program? Going once, going twice. Okay, seeing none, we'll return to the commission and we will welcome a motion.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second. Oh no, we can't discuss it. So we'll have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Dan?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
McKelvey?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Chair Paul Hamas.
Yes, so that passes unanimously. Okay, we are going to move to item number 4. That's 530, 542, and 548 Ocean Street. So this is an appeal, and we do have a little bit different of an order of operations here tonight. So to my knowledge, and I want to double check with staff on this, we're going to have a staff report, and then we'll hear from the appellant, and then we will hear from the applicant, and then public comment, and then I'm sorry. What was the last step there?
Then it'll be appellant rebuttal.
Appellant rebuttal. That's right. Okay. So we welcome our staff presentation.
Thank you. Just waiting for the screen to come up. So good evening, commissioners and members of the public. My name is Rena, and I'm the project planner that reviewed the proposed project at 530, 542, and 548 Ocean Street. The item before you tonight is the appeal of the zoning administrator acknowledgement of the environmental determination and approval of the non-residential demolition authorization permit, the lot line adjustment, watercourse development permit, design permit, heritage tree removal permit, density bonus request, and sign permit to demolish 4 commercial buildings, combine 3 lots into 1 parcel, remove 5 heritage-sized trees, and construct a 6-story mixed-use building with 225 residential units above ground floor commercial. That will also be located within the development setback area of a Category B creek on property located in the Community Commercial Zone District and within the Ocean Street Area Plan. I also wanted to just start off with noting that there are state laws that are applicable to the review of this project. First and foremost, state density bonus law is applicable here. I also wanted to note the Housing Accountability Act applies to the project as well as AB 2097, which is regarding the parking requirements on site. I did also want to note that we did receive like a supplemental appeal letter yesterday, and so I will also be addressing those points throughout my presentation tonight as well. So just to provide a little bit of site information, site context, the subject property is shown in red on the screen, as you can see. And in terms of the surrounding uses, Branciforte Creek is located directly north of the project site. There are also single-family homes directly adjacent to the east of the subject property, and they are zoned RL, which is multi-residential, low-density district. I do also want to note that the RL zone district allows for a maximum height of 30 feet. And in terms of what's located west and south of the subject property, there are commercial uses, and there's a hotel located at the corner of Ocean and SoCal. So the lots are designated as mixed-use visitor commercial. They're zoned community commercial, and they're located within the Ocean Street Area Plan, which all supports mixed-use development, such as the one that's proposed. So with regards to this slide, we just wanted to note that there was a community meeting held on May 20, 2024. Approximately 66 members of the public were in attendance, and there was a range of comments and concerns provided related to traffic, parking, the height of the building, neighborhood compatibility, and there are also comments provided in support regarding the affordable units. So just to provide a little bit of background on the project information as well, as I mentioned, there's 225 units proposed here, 17 of which are designated very low income, 5 units are for low income, and 17 units are moderate income, which is consistent with the affordability requirements in density bonus law, as well as the city's inclusionary housing requirements. The site plan on the screen also shows that there is parking proposed with the project as well. There's 84 parking spaces, even though none are required because they're located within a half-mile of a major transit stop. And they're also proposing a ground floor commercial space located along the frontage, shown in the pink area on the screen as well. The zoning administrator heard and approved this project on March 5th, and the appellant appealed the project on March 17th. So now I'll just go into more. Actually, on the next slide, I also wanted to show that on the second floor, there's also like a courtyard that's being proposed as well on the second floor of the project. So now I'll go into more information about the objections made in the appellant's appeal and how they're addressed. So the first we'll start with due process and noticing. The appellant is claiming that the city did not follow the proper and adequate procedures to facilitate the participation of residents in local government decision-making. They cited general plan policies related to facilitating participation, as well as ensuring that information is accessible to all. And so we did want to note that this project is considered a significant project under the community outreach policy that was adopted by council in 2018. Because it's a significant project, the noticing requirement, it's all properties within 1,000 feet of the subject properties are to be noticed, which is the largest noticing requirement for any projects. So in terms of this, for the community meeting, all of the notices were sent out to all those properties within 1,000 feet. Same with the public hearing for the zoning administrator, as well as for the planning commission hearing tonight. A significant projects webpage was also created where we posted the project plans at each time the applicant submitted and resubmitted, and we also sent out e-notifications to everyone that's subscribed to the significant projects webpage as well. So the applicant also made several arguments regarding the CEQA review for the project. So they're claiming that the project doesn't meet the requirements under CEQA, and they also stated that reduced parking under AB 2097 was not adequately analyzed or mitigated, including that the environmental impact review report or negative declaration didn't properly assess the impact of reduced parking on traffic. They also noted that there's conflicts with general plan policies related to community design, land use, and that the project fails to meet zoning standards. So firstly, I just wanted to clarify that the project qualifies for a Class 32 categorical exemption for infill developments. So an EIR or a negative declaration is not required to be prepared for this project because they qualify for the categorical exemption. Parking is also not an impact that's reviewed under CEQA as well, so I just wanted to clarify that. The project is consistent with the general plan and zoning designations and policies. This is also something that the applicant brought up, that they believe it's inconsistent. There is a specific government code section, 65589.J.3, that states that the receipt of a density bonus, incentive concession, waiver, or reduction of development standards pursuant to state density bonus law shall not constitute a valid basis on which to find a proposed housing development project inconsistent with an applicable plan, program, policy, ordinance, standard, or requirement. So the requested density bonus waivers and incentives concessions to modify or waive zoning requirements do not make the project inconsistent with the general plan and zoning designation. The appellant's attorney further discusses in their supplemental appeal letter that there is soil contamination on the project sites. They also claim that the density bonus law does not permit a waiver of the watercourse development setback from Branch of Forty Creek because of the soil contamination on site. And they also further note that the project does not qualify for an exemption because there is a possibility that the activity will have a significant effect on the environment due to unusual circumstances. The supplemental letter also goes on to talk about how there's no conditions of approval included in the project that requires soil cleanup and compliance with DTSE cleanup directives. So I just wanted to clarify that staff is aware of the contaminated soils on site, and at the time that staff was made aware of the soil contaminations, the applicant actually had already submitted an application to the State Department of Toxic Substances Control, otherwise known as DTSE, to do a voluntary cleanup. And so DTSE was going to oversee the cleanup of the soils prior to any construction on site. Since then, we had just found out yesterday that the applicant had withdrawn their application from DTSE for the voluntary cleanup on the advice of their consultant who did more soil testing out there, that the contamination levels in the soils are not high enough to warrant DTSE oversight into the cleanup. So we didn't know that they could withdraw their application. That was some new information that we found out. And so we are proposing to include 2 new conditions of approval. And I'm showing them on the slides here, and that's also what was passed out earlier as well. So what these 2 new conditions of approval explain is that they require that the applicant must work with DTSE and obtain DTSE approval of the remediation activity, and that the building and site design is deemed consistent with the remediation activity prior to issuance of building permits and site disturbance. We are also requiring that DTSE review and approve the site management plan prior to issuance of any demolition or building permits. And the applicant is also aware of these new conditions of approval, and they are in agreement to work with DTSE to ensure that the site is cleaned up. DTSE also has requirements and will require methods in the cleanup process that will ensure that the creek and adjacent properties will not be impacted by the soil cleanup. And so the proposed housing project's not going to have like a significant effect on the environment due to unusual circumstances. There are sites around the city that have soil contamination, but the soil will be cleaned up before the building is constructed, as required by these conditions of approval. So because of this, as well as the fact that the subject properties are not listed on any list compiled pursuant to section 65962.5 of the Government Code, which is otherwise known as the Cortese list / hazardous waste sites list, the project does continue to qualify for use of a categorical exemption for infill development. Also, just wanted to clarify as well with the structure being located within the development setback area, the citywide creeks and wetlands management plan would require issuance of a watercourse variance. But because the applicant has requested a density bonus waiver to that development setback, instead the city has processed a watercourse development permit with the submittal of a biotic report still discussing like the potential impacts of the project on the creek. And so because the site is required to be cleaned up with oversight from DTSC per the new conditions of approval, the proposed project will not have a public health or safety impact because these contaminants are not going to impact the creek or adjacent properties since that property will be cleaned up prior to the project being built. So the city does have to approve the waiver to the watercourse development setback consistent with state law. Continuing on with the objections that the appellants made with regards to air, water, traffic, and noise, the project must demonstrate compliance with the applicable building code requirements concerning noise, and any noise that's going to occur as a result of construction is temporary. Once constructed, the project's not going to cause any noise that would make the environment any less desirable because the project is required to comply with the city's noise ordinance. With regards to traffic, a traffic impact study was submitted for the project, which was reviewed by Public Works staff with no concerns. And the project was also reviewed using the city's Senate Bill 743 guidelines and is assumed to have a less than significant vehicle miles traveled, so VMT, impact using the map-based screening criteria. When it comes to water quality, the project has been designed to meet the stormwater management requirements for construction and operation, so the project's not going to result in any significant impacts to water quality. And with regards to air quality, the project will likely not result in any significant impacts to air quality just based on the recently certified environmental impact report for the 908 Ocean Street project. That project contained a larger number of units. There were 389 units proposed as part of that project. And so this project with 225 units is not would likely not exceed the Monterey Bay Air Resources District's operational thresholds. The appellant is also claiming that the city cannot grant the applicant the 15 requested waivers because they did not demonstrate that it is needed to make the project economically feasible. And they had also separately made another argument regarding the incentive concession that the applicant requested at the zoning administrator public hearing. I want to first clarify that for waivers, what waivers are is they're intended to remove development standards that would otherwise have the effect of physically precluding the construction of the density bonus project with the housing units. So it's not tied to any economic feasibility or cost reductions, and density bonus projects they have unlimited waivers that they can request. With regards to incentive concessions, those are intended to lower the cost of construction of housing in order to provide for the affordable units. And the project is allowed to request up to 3 incentive concessions for this project. So I did also want to note that there's prior case law as well regarding this topic. There's Wolmer versus City of Berkeley, which was further upheld by Bankers Hill versus City of San Diego, which basically explained that cities cannot require the applicant to redesign a project as proposed by reducing like amenity spaces or unit sizes so that they can no longer require a waiver. And so as applied to this project, we would have to grant the applicant the 15 waivers that they've requested because we cannot make them redesign the project to meet those development standards. With regards to the incentive concession, the applicant had requested a second incentive concession at the zoning administrator public hearing regarding the requirements of a condition of approval that was included where they have to provide metro passes to all residents in the building indefinitely. So they provided information that needing to meet this requirement would add $250,000 per year to the project. And so by waiving this requirement, they are receiving like an actual cost reduction to the project. So the city does have to grant them that incentive concession. With regards to the traffic impact study and parking, the appellant is claiming that there are deficiencies in the traffic impact study regarding conflicts with transportation policies in the general plan that promote bicycle and pedestrian facilities with regards to inadequate site design and failure to provide emergency access. But they didn't point out like what the specific policies were that the project is in conflict with. But with that being said, the proposed project is proposing to widen the sidewalk along Ocean Street on the south side of the the site plan or floor plan that you see on the screen. They are going to be improving this sidewalk to be 12 to 15 feet in width. They're also meeting the bicycle parking requirements that's required per the Muni Code for Class 1 and Class 2 bike parking spaces. And they're also paying their fair share cost of extending the bike pathway that currently terminates at May Avenue along the left side of the screen, connecting that down to Ocean Street, not to exceed $100,000. So that's furthering policies in the general plan and Ocean Street area plan that promotes like bicycle transportation. The project is also located within a half mile of a major transit stop. So again, it doesn't require any parking. The appellant's attorney supplemental letter talks about how the project does not qualify under AB 2097. And so I just want to clarify that as per the Public Resources Code, it does define major transit stops as the intersection of two or more major bus routes with a frequency of service interval of 20 minutes or less during the morning and afternoon peak commute periods. This project is located within a half mile of existing transit, and the law is silent on the duration of existing transit. So while the existing transit station is a temporary transit station, once the Pacific Station on Front Street reopens, this project will still be located within a half mile of a major transit stop as defined. The appellant attorney's letter also notes like walking distance, and AB 2097 does not contain any language that indicates that that half mile distance should be measured based on walking distance. The half mile distance is typically, it should be measured in a straight direct line from the nearest edge of the parcel containing the project site to any point on the parcel that makes up the property upon which the major transit stop is located. So this is in keeping with the ordinary meaning of how required distances are typically measured in state housing laws, absent any specific statutory instructions to the contrary. With regards to emergency access, the fire department has reviewed these plans and they have no concerns with the project. And they will again review the plans at the building permit stage as well. But just to provide a bit more information on how emergency access will work, essentially it will work by the applicant providing like a 4-foot walkway on top of the podium deck at the rear of the building to allow the fire personnel to access all sides of the structure. So regarding heritage-sized trees on adjacent properties, the appellant has claimed that the heritage tree removal permit must be denied due to a public health, safety, and environmental problem that it will cause to neighboring residents that abut the project. The appellant's attorney also further notes that the applicant cannot trespass onto the appellant's property to remove the tree. So I do want to clarify that the arborist report was submitted for the project that discusses the heritage size trees on the subject property as well as on the adjacent properties. It provided information about potential impacts to the adjacent heritage size trees, but it also included like recommendation on how to retain those trees since they are on adjacent properties. The applicant had previous discussions with the prior property owner of the Leland cypress tree, but since then the ownership has changed hands, and so now the city is well aware that the appellant is not okay with their tree being removed. So staff did work with the city attorney to draft modified conditions of approval shown on the screen here, which will provide options for the applicant on how they can move forward. The first option is that they must obtain written consent authorizing a removal of the tree on the adjacent properties. And if this consent is not obtained, then they shall either revise the project plans to preserve the heritage tree, or they have to obtain a court order that says that they can cut the limbs and roots of the tree up to the property line. So the applicant has been working with the project arborist to kind of further investigate the roots of that adjacent tree and see if there's any significant roots that grow onto the subject property and determine whether or not a redesign is needed. But they haven't been able to do this work prior to this hearing. So they have decided to propose a design change to the project to retain the Leland cypress tree on the appellant's property. This design change is shown on the screen here where it is circled. Basically the applicant is combining two of the notches here where my cursor is so that there's more of a setback around the heritage tree located at the rear of the appellant's property. The city arborist has indicated that 3 times the tree diameter is the stated formula by the International Society of Arboriculture for tolerable impact to heritage trees that have a trunk diameter of 16 inches, such as this Leland cypress tree. So setting the building back 4 feet from the adjacent tree will allow for the tree to be preserved. But because of this redesign on the ground floor, the applicant is actually no longer meeting the city's objective design standard for building modulations along the rear of the property. And so an additional density bonus waiver is being requested, and a new is being requested to waive that requirement for the rear facade of the ground floor. And the new condition of approval is introduced like below the revised plans on the screen here, where essentially staff will review the final building permit plans showing the revised design. The appellant has also claimed that the design permit finding for the project is inconsistent with the general plan and Ocean Street area plan policies, and they included some specific policies but didn't really provide specific notes on how the project is inconsistent with those policies. So on the slide, I kind of pulled out like different policies from the general plan and the Ocean Street area plan that the project does meet. And I go into more detail about this in the agenda report regarding how the project does meet these policies. Essentially, mixed-use development, high-density mixed-use development along a primary transportation corridor such as Ocean Street is something that is encouraged and supported by the general plan policies. and the Ocean Street area plan. And so again, this project is also meeting like bike parking requirements. They are improving sidewalks, and they're also providing a commercial space, which is a benefit to the neighborhood to also encourage walkability as well. So with regards to this slide, the appellant is claiming that the first proposed variation to the objective design standard would cause public health and safety problems and is not meeting the general plan policy of maintaining community-oriented policing. The variation regarding the objective design standard is that the applicant is required to construct that bike path connection that's from May Avenue to Ocean Street within the current maintenance access road that's between the creek and where the proposed building is located. And so the variation that they're requesting is that instead of them constructing that bike path, they're going to pay their fair share cost, not to exceed $100,000. And then the city will be the ones that will construct that bike path connection in the near future. And so it's not super clear how the project doesn't meet the general plan policies in this case, or with regards to the community-oriented policing section of the general plan. But with regards to like any concerns about safety, a gate will be maintained on the new pathway, which is not under review as part of this project once constructed. There will need to be some sort of emergency access to exit the pathway as well. So for example, like an emergency push bar to allow exit from the pathway, but the gate will be maintained and locked at night as is currently the case. So again, I just have the new conditions of approval that are being proposed up on the slide here. And based on the presentation, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission deny the appeal, upholding the zoning administrator acknowledgement of the environmental determination and approval of the non-residential demolition authorization permit, lot line adjustment, watercourse development permit, design permit, heritage tree removal permit, density bonus request, and sign permit based on the findings in the staff report and the revised conditions of approval. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that very detailed presentation. Any questions from commissioners for staff? Commissioner McKelvey.
I just want to confirm that the AP sheets are current. That's the proposal that we're talking about.
Are you talking about the project plan set or
The project plan set, yeah.
So the revised design change is shown in the memo that was sent over to the Planning Commission on Wednesday. So
I did see the notch has not changed, but other than that, that's the proposal we're looking at. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then we are going to move to the period where the appellant is going to take some time to speak with us. Before we start that, really quick, you can come on up, sir. This won't take long. Really quickly, if just a quick little cautionary. So this project has risen to the level of appeal, right? Which means there's some disagreement going on in the community around this project. And reasonable people can disagree, right? But the way that we disagree is important. And so during this hearing, what I'm going to ask of members of the public is that we don't interrupt, we don't make fun of people that are speaking. If you disagree with what they have to say, there's going to be a time for you to address that during a public comment period, okay? So please don't clap, don't boo. Many people are probably wishing to speak here tonight, some people for the first time. And so we don't want to create an atmosphere where it's scary. Right? We want everybody to be able to address the commission on what's going on here tonight. So please just hold your applause, hold your boos. If you can't contain yourself, there's a lot of open space outside, and you can step outside if you need. Okay, thank you. Our appellant, please. You have, in our bylaws, it says up to 20 minutes. I'm hoping that it won't be that long.
Okay,
But
thank you.
That's up to you.
I appreciate it. My name is Eric Rabiel. I live on 129 May Avenue. Both my kids were born here in Santa Cruz, Bayview, Mission Hill, Santa Cruz High. My son goes to Cabrillo, plays baseball. They won tonight against Feather River. Just, by the way, go Cabrillo, go Seahawks. And I'm an educator. I've worked at Cabrillo for 10 years. I was an EOP counselor for first-generation low-income students at UC Santa Cruz. I currently am an administrator at West Valley College, have a real estate program under my thing where we're creating actually certificates to train people to be property managers in affordable housing units. I'm working with Merit Corporation. I'm very familiar with our community, the needs, and this project is just really, really amazing to me that it's got approval, and I know our hands are tied. I'm going to talk to that, but we go 32,000 square feet, which is 0.73 acres. We went from 41 units, which is the amount that's allowed under the law, under the zoning, to 225 units, 3 stories to 6, 30 feet to 78 feet. 23,000 of indoor and outdoor space is required by our zoning to 2,593. 22 units out of the 225 are low income. This is a developer that is coming from outside, not from our community, and has looked at how to manipulate the law of flexible dwelling units and is shoving 151 FDUs, 151 at 320 square feet. This is a dormitory. And they are claiming unlimited waivers. They have a 1-foot setback from 4 neighboring homes. Many of our neighbors are here today. I can stand at my wall and touch their building, and it's going to go up to 78 feet high. So the backdrop to that is you have done a great job. We have a pro-housing designation up through 2027. We scored 7th highest score out of 47 California jurisdictions that have the pro-housing designation. It's only 3 to 4% of cities in California have that because we've been developing housing for our community. I just talked to the mayor in Los Gatos recently. They had a developer come in, it's a local developer actually, and the laws don't understand. When it abuts a residential, the laws don't give it a distinction, right? There's about 127 laws, but they worked with the community and they redesigned the 6-story project to be 3-story condominiums, more in line with the plan. That's the kind of developer that works with the community, that sees the long-term investment. Ria's Capital is not from here. They're from the East Bay. They're not from here. I don't even know if they have another project. But they come from the outside and they look through these laws. And I actually studied policy. We create policy with great intentions, but they find the loopholes and they do the bare minimum. And that's why we have 22 out of 225 units are low income, and they're getting 100% density bonus state laws. So what I want to do is focus on what you can do. What is in our power? When we have someone who comes in without respect to the community and without respect to the neighborhood, to the 7 years of the Ocean Street plan, to create a semblance of the character of how it's supposed to be. So I'm going to focus on a few areas of my appeal. And I will go through, but my goal is that you deny this project. And to summarize, you can't authorize a developer to destroy the trees on our properties. The city must do an initial study and then conduct an environmental impact review under CEQA. The city must include mitigation to protect the people and the environment from the impacts of hazardous waste. And the city can't issue a waiver of the watercourse development setback from the creek, and the city cannot waive the parking requirements. So first, if the city approves these permits, the city can't issue Ria's Capital permits to remove my trees. There have been some changes apparently, but that goes for my neighbor as well. If the city removes 3 of the trees that are heritage, I own 1 of them. Under California law, the law doesn't authorize them to harm the trees on our property. The city would be liable for slander of title if they approve the heritage tree permit removal. So therefore, they must revoke that removal. And that applies not just for my property, but for my neighboring neighbor who has 2 trees. The city is currently publicly implying that Ria's Capital has the right to the trees on my and my neighbor's property, and this is incorrect. If the city approves the permits to remove or harm trees on my property and we lose the trees, the city will be liable for slander of title. The property is located on toxic waste and poses a threat to the public health. According to the Department of Toxic Substances Control, this is an active cleanup site as of October 1st, 2024. In my thing is Exhibit A that we got, is Exhibit A, which is for the record, and in my supplement. In Exhibit A, it shows that there's arsenic up to 30 milligrams per kilogram, and the DTSC's residential screening levels for arsenic are 0.11. So this is 30 milligrams, but the residential screen levels are 0.11. The arsenic on site is more than 270 times the amount deemed safe for residential areas. There was also chloroform in the report from the Department of Toxic and Substance Control. Chloroform vapors up to 400 micrograms per cubic meter in the soil. And there was tetrachloroethylene, PCE vapors up to 100 micrograms per cubic meter in the soil. The residential screening levels for PCE are 0.46, whereas they had 100. That's 217 times the amount deemed safe for residential areas. This isn't included anywhere in the zoning administrator's report, and it doesn't appear that the city has completed any analysis to ensure that the hazardous waste doesn't harm the people or the environment. This was not in the documents that the zoning administrator was presented to. This was not discussed until I brought this to the attention. The project, like I said, is a very large giant. It's the most dense project I've seen to date, and it has toxic waste, and it's next to residential homes. If approved, it will be built closer than allowed by the Santa Cruz Municipal Code to the branch of 40 Creek. Now, the developer has called that a ditch. And I don't know if you know where the De La Viega softball parks are, the Washington Park, all the way down comes branch of 40 Creek. We're about 2.2 miles from San Lorenzo River, so I just feel like there's just disrespect. The lower portion of the creek supports steelhead trout, monarch butterflies, yellow warblers, and yellow-breasted chats. Steelhead trout are listed as a threatened species under the Federal Endangered Species Act, and there are sightings up and down the San Lorenzo River. Monarch butterflies are currently being considered for endangered species status, and yellow warblers and yellow-breasted chats are California Department of Fish and Game species of special concern. The creek flows into the San Lorenzo River, which has been designated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as critical habitat for steelhead trout. The San Lorenzo River flows into the Pacific Ocean directly onto Cowles Beach, near Cowles Surf Spot, Steamers Lane, and Main Beach. This poses a great risk to the people and the environment. I want to remind that CEQA requires the state and local government entities to give major consideration to preventing environmental damage. It requires analysis, evaluation, and public discourse of adverse environmental impacts that government approval of a project may cause. CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, must be interpreted to provide the fullest possible protection to the environment. CEQA places the burden of environmental investigation on government rather than public. So the lack of any mention of this report, and there was approval by the zoning administrator. The project doesn't qualify for a CEQA exemption. Despite these hazards, the city exempted the project from the California Environmental Quality Act. The zoning administrator approved an infill development exemption, also called a Class 32 exemption for the project, which means there's no environmental review of the project under CEQA. Now, I could understand that if they were not aware of this information at the time. The project doesn't qualify for this exemption for two reasons. To receive an infill exemption, the project has to conform to the zoning and general plan, but the project doesn't do so. And that's because it doesn't qualify for the watercourse exemption because it poses a reasonable potential for public health and safety. The city can't grant an infill exemption for the projects because there's a reasonable possibility that it will have a significant effect on the environment due to the unusual circumstances. In this case, we have an extremely dense housing development on toxic waste that we don't know the extent of that is next to residential areas in the development setback from a creek which supports federally threatened steelhead trout, potentially endangered monarch butterflies, and sensitive birds. There is a possibility that this will have a significant effect on the environment. The zoning administrator didn't analyze or even discuss these issues when deciding that the project did not meet any environmental review under CEQA. The project cannot be built in the development setback for the branch of 40 Creek. The project doesn't qualify for a waiver of the watercourse development setback. Santa Cruz Municipal Code 24.08.2190 and Santa Cruz Citywide Creeks and Wetlands Management Plan requires the development shall be set back 50 feet from branch of 40 Creek. The proposed project, however, if approved, will be encroaching approximately 16.2 feet into the development setback. To build in the setback, Rias Capital requested a waiver of the development setback. The developers are not entitled to waivers that have an adverse impact on health or safety. Building in the development setback would impact health and safety. Demolition and construction will disturb the soil contamination that exceeds more than 200 times the levels deemed safe for residential areas by the state of California, and will release arsenic, chloroform, and PCE into the environment. This poses a risk to adjacent residents. As well, the developing 225 units of housing on top of the soil that significantly exceeds the limited deemed safe for residential areas will also have an impact on public health and safety. In addition, Branciforte Creek flows into the San Lorenzo River, which flows into the Pacific Ocean close to Santa Cruz Main Beach, Cowell's Children's Surfing Area, Steamer Lane, which puts surfers, beachgoers, and ocean users at risk. The project is not consistent with Santa Cruz Watercourse Development Permit, and the density bonus law does not permit a waiver of the Watercourse Development Permit due to the public and safety hazard. The project is not consistent with, because it doesn't qualify for the waiver to the Watercourse Development Permit, the project is not consistent with applicable zoning regulations, and therefore it cannot take advantage of an infill development exemption. The developer relied on a transit stop that won't exist when construction begins to argue that they shouldn't have to provide sufficient parking for the project. The traffic study cites for compliance of 0.4 miles the River Transit Temporary Center. I talked to the transportation planning manager. They confirmed what Rena says. Well, the law it doesn't say if it's temporary or not. But the developer and the city knew full on when they applied for the permit that the transit center was temporary. It's supposed to come back potentially in February 2026. This developer will start breaking ground in December 2026. That means even before it breaks ground, the residents will have to go 0.6 miles to be able to get to the major transit. It does not meet AB 2097. But I was told that the law isn't clear on that. Well, the law came into bell in 2023, but the intent of the law, AB 2097 codified in government code and municipal law, permits cities to eliminate any parking requirements for projects that are within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop. Rias Capital has indicated that the project is located 0.4 miles from a major transit stop at Riverfront Transit Center. This transit stop is temporary. It will be open only solely during the demolition and redevelopment of the Metro Pacific Station. The Metro Pacific Station is slated to reopen in February 26, likely before the project construction even begins and long before the residents move into the project. The project will not provide the ongoing traffic relief contemplated by the statute or the municipal code and will likely result in a major reduction in available street parking in the vicinity of the project. The project cannot use this loophole to avoid their obligation to provide adequate parking for project residents. And the last is the conditions of approval. They don't protect Santa Cruz residents or ensure that the development is actually affordable. The city's conditions of approval do not require Rias Capital to complete cleanup or take any action to prevent contamination from spilling into Branciforte Creek or harming people living next to or in the development. As proposed, the city will have no power to ensure that the project site is actually remediated before construction begins, nor enforce any mitigation measures to protect the health of residents, neighbors, or the environment. The conditions of approval also do not ensure that the development actually includes affordable housing. The density bonus law requires the developer to agree to maintain continued affordability for at least 55 years. There are no such requirements in the conditions of approval. I am told that there's a series of new conditions and changes that I haven't had a chance to look at or review that just came about. But this is the burden. The burden has fallen on me to hold the city, to hold the developer accountable, and doing the research and doing this. So my request is that this project not be approved as proposed. That you remove the heritage for it. You remove the exemption from the infill exemption, and that they have to do initial study and do an environmental review, and that you do not issue the watercourse development setback, and you do not issue a waiver of the parking requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Is the applicant here? Come on up. Welcome. You'll have up to 20 minutes.
We have a presentation that Rena's going to load up. That's okay. Okay, good evening, commissioners. My name is Lisa Vilhauer. I am in charge of design and entitlements at Riaz Capital. Joining me, I have Omar Hassan from Workbench, our architect, as well as Amanda Monchamp from Monchamp and Meldrum. We also have our team from Riaz Capital here and our arborist, Kurt Fouts, if he can answer any of the questions you guys might have. I quickly want to introduce you to Riaz Capital and who we are as a company. So we can go to slide 3. Going. Okay, so Riaz Capital is a Oakland-based development and asset management company focusing on creating and innovating entry-level housing for California. For over 20 years, we have been building and operating a portfolio of stylish, transit-oriented, and attainable housing. Our units are specifically designed for middle-income earners. So we're talking teachers, nurses, nonprofit employees, city officials, those that don't fit into a traditional housing. We've been in business for over 20 years. We have 2,200 units under management and 1,500 units in development. We've completed 10 projects since 2020, and we've created 1,000+ jobs with that development. Our median resident income is $72,000. Over 50% of our residents qualify as low income. Over 70% qualify as moderate income. The majority of our units are currently priced at or below low income rent limits. 100% of our units are at or below moderate income limits. This is just some of the nonprofits that we partner with to bring their employees housing. So we work with TRIO and Urban Ed that both provide housing for teachers. And then we've also worked with International Rescue Committee, which helps victims of humanitarian crises find both employment and housing. This is just an image of a couple of the projects that we've completed recently, so you can see both design quality, construction quality, as well as some of the units that we provide. Okay, and so why Santa Cruz? At Riaz Capital, we are committed to helping solve California's housing crisis. This crisis is particularly acute in Santa Cruz. So in 2023, the Low Income Housing Coalition found residents within the Santa Cruz, Watsonville metropolitan area have the highest cost burden for a 2-bedroom unit in the country. Also in 2020, the American Communities Survey found that 52.8% of households in the city of Santa Cruz are non-familial, so roommate situations. We try to appropriately size our units, our amenities, and parking to provide more apartments at attainable rents. So while the project will provide 39 restricted affordable units, our studio rents will also likely be under what that moderate restricted rent is. Our studios also allow these people to live on their own rather than a roommate situation. That way it does free up housing throughout the city. It's just some of the articles that have come out over the last couple years. Now jumping into the project. So, I think this has been discussed a lot. The project's located on Ocean Street. It's just south of Branciforte Creek, just north of Soquel Avenue. The project currently has 4 existing commercial buildings with surface parking. The property, the buildings range from 30 to 65 years old and were mostly vacant at the time that we purchased it, and they've remained that way. There's also narrow 6-foot sidewalks along Ocean Street, no street trees, no stormwater. We also aim to buy transit-oriented properties that are somewhat vacant commercial pieces like this so that we're not displacing current residents. Briefly, Ocean Street area plan. The vision was that Ocean Street will become a beautiful, multifaceted gateway to Santa Cruz that is an attractive, friendly shopping district where local residents can fill many of their daily shopping needs. And it states that on especially wide streets such as Ocean Street, it is important for pedestrian comfort to provide taller buildings that define a strong edge for the street. The project site is in a very transit-oriented location, half a mile from downtown. It's about a 15-minute bike ride to either UC Santa Cruz or only 8 to the beach or so. Now, diving into the project, I think there were some inaccuracies in the numbers, so I want to make sure that that's very clear. So there's 225 new residential units. There's 151 FDU studios, 4 one-bedrooms, and then there's 72 bedrooms. There's 39 deed-restricted affordable units, and 12 of those will be the 2 bedrooms. We have resident amenity spaces throughout the building. We have 84 parking spaces. I think it's 283 bike stalls throughout the project, about 3,400 square feet of commercial space, and then new sidewalk as well as 15 feet. Touching on some of the public outreach that we did do, we had a community meeting in May. As of that date, our contact info was posted not only in that meeting, also on the project website, as well as signage on the site. We sent letters to all of the adjacent neighbors back in August 2024, as well as surrounding businesses in November. I do want to point out that the house on May Street sold late last year. It was listed, our project was listed in those disclosures for that project or for that property in 2 different places. So when the new owner bought it, he signed off on that disclosure that this project was coming and made that choice. So we also have been offering to meet with any residents, either individually or in groups, since the zoning administrator hearing. Okay, now into project design, which I'm going to let Omar speak briefly and talk through that.
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, commissioners. I'm Omar with Workbench, a designer. And thank you, Rena, for the very thorough presentation. I get to focus on just the fun aspects of the design since she covered a lot of the nitty-gritty. So you can go to the next slide. When we started thinking about this project, we were thinking about the goals for Ocean Street as a gateway for Santa Cruz, particularly for visitors, but also for residents, and thinking about the type of architecture that occurs along Ocean Street, looking to precedents that are sort of mid-century modern or Art Deco, and doing a sort of contemporary version of that for this site. You can go to the next slide. In this elevation, you can see we were working with the multifamily objective design standards to kind of define different building volumes and create a symmetry and language that highlights the different building entries. On the left side of this rendering, you see the residential entry with a deep recess with covered bicycle parking and hangout area for residents. That's also clad in exterior tile for that kind of texture and human scale. And then on the right side of the rendering, you see that commercial space also highlighted with the building volume above. And you can go to the next slide. We have this continuous canopy that sort of unifies the building all across Ocean Street, provides that cover for those outdoor spaces and bike parking. Columns touch down where required to support the building above, but we are providing that 12 to 15 foot wide sidewalk for future demand of bicycle and pedestrian traffic coming through there. You can go to the next slide. This last view shows that courtyard condition with exterior bridges and walkways where residents have opportunities to hang out in a communal open space and connect with nature. One more slide. These are the landscape plans, and it was a big effort to work with the city. We actually did a few redesigns on this one to get all of the demands in there, and so we were able to get the 12 to 15 foot wide sidewalk, providing as many street trees as we possibly could, as well as greenery. And you can start to see where those deep recesses and covered spaces are at the residential lobby and commercial space. One more forward is the ground floor. I won't belabor this because we've covered it several times at this point, but the one item I did want to highlight is the trash staging and delivery area in front of that residential amenity, and that's intended to be used for trash pickup and also for commercial loading. You can go to the next slide. Here you get an idea of the general building layout, and you've all seen the plans so far, but it's essentially a double loaded corridor on the south side and a single loaded corridor on the north side that is heavily articulated in conformance with the multifamily objective design standards. And yeah, on the top, these are the upper floors, basically levels 3 through 6. You get a sense of the exterior corridors and bridges that connect the two buildings. And then few changes that happened between the community meeting and with city feedback. One request was for additional articulation and materials on the rear of the building, having the rear appear less like a rear and more like another front. And so you can see on the left where we started, and on the right is where we've landed now with the additional modulation and different kind of blue ombre materials that you see throughout the project. We increased the sidewalk width. We increased the commercial space by almost 2,000 square feet. As has already been mentioned, the payment for the Branson 40 Creek Trail and increased bike parking. I'll pass it back to Lisa.
Just wanted to talk through some of the project benefits. A lot of what we've already talked about, but the 225 units, 39 deed restricted. We'll have 70 full-time equivalent jobs created during the 24 months of construction, and then we'll have 5 full-time jobs in operations once the building is operational. As Omar just mentioned, we are doing the $100,000 to complete the Branson Forte Trail. There's $1.5 million in development impact fees, so that'll fund fire, police, schools, childcare, parks, and infrastructure. And then $650,000 in annual property tax payments, which is about a 10 times increase from the current site. We also have rooftop solar panels that'll further offset any of the building's electricity consumption, as well as being Title 24 compliant. Okay, I think we've gone through the density bonus, but here's a little overview for you guys, but I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead 2 slides. I've kind of written out, and what I've done here is I want to explain how the density bonus on this project works, because I do know, the AB 1287 is a newer one, and it's sometimes a little harder to get. So the project has 113 units in its base project. 36 of those units were the standard density. The general plan allows up to 40 units. We then have the flexible density units, which don't count towards the density, and we have 77 of those in the base project. So then we go over to the right, and where we have let's start with the green, that's AB 2345, which was your traditional density bonus. By giving the 15% very low, we are able to get a 50% density bonus. So when you go back to the left, you see the 56.5 units. Going back to the yellow, we have the 15% moderate. That comes from AB 1287. And 1287 is very specific to what type of affordable housing they want, and moderate is one of them. So we have moderate on there. That gives us another 50% density bonus. So that's the 56.5. So total units allowed on the project are 226, and we've provided 225. In terms of the total affordable units, the city inclusionary requirement is 20% low-income units. Since we are restricting 15% or 17 of those very low units, those count towards the city's inclusionary because they're further restricted than the low. And then we add another 5% or 5 units on top of that to get to the 22. Just want to add back on, those bicycle parking spots again, vehicle parking. Rena touched on AB 2097. We are also within 2 other bus stops that are within a half mile. So yes, that one temporary one is moving. There are others, and this is in a transit-rich area. I do want to also comment the project residents will not be able to get parking permits in either May Avenue area. So they will not be able to park on the streets behind the project. And then I think Rena covered the traffic, so we can skip over that. In terms of project shadows and views, there were shadow studies that were completed at the time of project application, and there were no objective design standards that this project was subject to in regards to shadows or views. The shadows will be cast to the north side of the project, and then we did also offer the appellant either to frost for the lower 18 inches of the windows, which would help shift the sight line for those first 2 floors of residents would have a view down into the yards behind. But if we're able to frost, then they can look kind of further up, or blinds that are lifted from the top down. That lets like people, get light in their unit without having privacy concerns. And then Rena's also covered this, but the project modification to really help reduce that impact on that cypress at 129 May. And we are also, as she mentioned, doing a route exploration. Currently, there is I'm gonna guess like a 6-foot block wall that's at the property line. And it could be that there is a footing that is going down a foot or two already, and no roots would have grown under that, or minimal roots. So we'll be doing that over the next couple weeks. And our arborist, who is here and can answer any questions, will come out and check. And it sounds like the city's arborist would come out and check at that time as well. And then just quick touch on the construction schedule. We're looking at starting in December 2026, and it'd be about 24 hours to complete. I'm going to now pass it over to Amanda at Montchamp and Meldrum to talk about the supplemental information that came in today and yesterday.
Good evening. So I really am just going to focus on the CEQA and the categorical exemption. So this project is categorically exempt, as the zoning administrator properly found. The appellant has raised some issues, which I'll go through briefly. As Lisa just covered, for the trees, there is a condition that requires the approval and acceptance by the landowner if, as Lisa, I think, explained, or as maybe Rena explained in her presentation, one of the trees on the appellant's property will not be removed. As to the other property, if that property owner does not agree, then that tree will also not be removed. That's now required in conditions 15 and 39. So that addresses that issue. As to the watercourse development permit, currently the project is entirely outside of the 30-foot riparian corridor under your wetlands plan, and there is a portion of the building that is within the 50-foot development setback corridor or wetland plan corridor. However, the existing building encroaches further into that development setback than the proposed project. So the proposed project actually reduces how much building is in the development setback. There's also numerous other buildings along that particular stretch of the creek that are within the 50-foot development setback, which is why your ordinance provides for the watercourse variance. And so we are using a waiver to not get the variance, but we are still getting the watercourse development permit and complying with the watercourse development permit code. So we will be doing all the things required under that code. So the appellant has said that there's a public health and safety impact from granting that variance. That is not the case. As I said, the building's already within the development setback. Other buildings are as well. We're actually reducing it. So there's no public health and safety impact from building within the setback since the building's already there. Next, the appellant is raising that there's historic contamination on the property. This is migrating from an existing now closed dry cleaner. This is not new information. As Rena said, the city was aware of this. There's a whole separate process through what's called the Department of Toxic Substances Control, which is the agency that has regulatory oversight over remediation. So RIA's Capital has been working with DTSC, and they will be reviewing what's called the voluntary cleanup agreement. So this amount of contamination is, and there's a report that we submitted today from Langen, which is an environmental remediation expert group of consultants. They study all the contamination, they oversee the remediation. So it's 800 cubic feet, which is actually a very small amount of contamination of soil that needs to be dug out. It's not toxic waste. It can be disposed of at a class 2 landfill. So I know some of the numbers that the appellant raised sound like they're really high. They're actually not, they're not. And so it's actually a pretty easy, small cleanup. The appellant is arguing basically that the remediation makes this not fall within a categorical exemption. There's actually a whole separate exemption that applies to remediation activities that cost less than $1 million to clean up. This costs way less than $1 million to clean up. So the remediation itself is also categorically exempt. So it's very common. Brownfields are everywhere. in an urban environment, this amount of contamination is very, very typical and not unusual. And it's also now covered in condition of approval 56 and 57, where the remediation will have to be addressed to the city's satisfaction. Lastly, I think Lisa already covered, I think it's actually the temporary transit stop. Even without that, I think it's actually 3 different transit stops that were still within the geographic range of half a mile. So I think the rest really relates to density bonus in terms of the appellant's concern that we are using density bonus loopholes. They're not loopholes, they're just what the law requires under the density bonus. I think Lisa walked through how the units become what they become under the density bonus. If you guys have any questions, perfectly timed. I will answer any questions.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Any questions from commissioners for either? Commissioner McKelvey.
Just regarding the toxics, we hear it's just way higher than is acceptable, and you're saying that it's not. I think the conditions say there's ongoing monitoring as the project is done, or is the cleanup completely prior and it's a clean site when they begin?
So there's 2 different things. So good question. There's the off-site dry cleaner that's causing the soil vapor. They are under an active remediation for that off-site contamination. So that is going through a separate DTSC process to remediate that and to manage that groundwater, that soil vapor
And
plume.
it's not on this property?
Not on this property, no. So that is causing the soil gas. We are voluntarily doing what's called a vapor barrier, which keeps the vapors from coming up into the building. Plus, it's parking and commercial on the first floor, not residential. So that's one. And then on site, there's a small amount of material that exceeds residential standards that will be dug out and removed. Doesn't have to go to a high-class hazardous waste facility. It's not that contaminated. We have very low environmental screening levels in California. That doesn't mean that that level is toxic or this huge problem. It's just a very conservative standard to say, if you have that much, we want you to take it out. So the project itself will remediate and remove that amount of soil that exceeds that screening level, and we'll put in the vapor barrier to address the offsite plume.
So that's where my question would go, I guess, is what is the end condition that we're looking at? Is it that we will still have toxics possibly flowing under the site, but it'll be contained by the vapor barrier? Or is the cleanup that's happening at the dry cleaners expected to stop that contamination?
So that it won't stop that. They will be taking out the root of that problem, to think of it that way, which will reduce it and lessen it. And over time, the vapors will all off gas and dissipate. But that could still be going on. That's why we're doing the barrier. If that would just fix the whole problem, it would go away. But that's not how really soil gas and vapor problems work. So that's why we have the barrier. So we'll take out our little bit of dirt, we'll put in the barrier. So to the extent the dry cleaner continues to off gas the soil vapor, it will be addressed through the barrier.
And is there any
And we're not
prognostication
worsening our
about what that is going to be or what level that's going to be at compared to the levels that we're talking about? Is it going to be, sorry.
Yeah, the soil vapor, that level is only actually, we only had one place on the site where that level was exceeded. And so their remediation work offsite will reduce that. And so will only be lower.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one other question, sorry. I don't think this is for you necessarily, but are we talking about a transit line or a transit location in terms of the half-mile standard?
It's both. It has to do with the number of transit trips going by a station.
In a given
So
time,
there's
right.
intervals and the location.
And so, but when we're talking about the appropriateness of the location, hey, thanks, are we talking about from a particular stop or from the transit line or from the transit center? I'm asking for the public,
Go ahead, Matt.
truthfully.
Hi, good evening. I'm Matt Starkey here, Transportation Manager.
I think the clearest way to consider this question in the appeal is to think about the proposed, the planned transit center, which is the downtown transit center. We can ignore the conditions today because our downtown transit center is an adopted location on the map. And so this development is within a half mile of that location. So the questions about existing and those sort of things are not really relevant because the proposed condition is such that this development is within a half mile of it.
I guess my question is, do stops on Ocean Street and Soquel qualify it, or is it just those transit centers we're talking about?
In this condition, it's the transit center, the proposed one. That
I'm sorry, I'm
if you're sort of curious about the lot itself, maybe not considering this development.
I'm asking about 2097, I think it is. Is that specific to the transit center, or is it just high quality transit lines?
It could be both.
Okay,
But in this case, yeah, we can just think about the transit center. It doesn't need to be either or, just one.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Thompson.
I'd appreciate a little better understanding of the area between the building itself and the creek. It just shows in your map as a green thing, and I think that's an important. It's an important question to me. How will it be planted, maintained? Is there public access to it? What's its role?
Sure. Can I have you go back to like maybe one of the original or the bottom plan? Yeah. This'll, yeah. So you can kind of see you see our building where there's bike storage. The property line is actually at where the angled bike storage is, and then you can see the dash line that comes down. So the area that's kind of white next to the building, that's going to be planted per the biotic report, which complies with all of the development permit. So that is native plants. That'll be maintained by our building, all of that. The area to I guess as I'm looking at it, to the left or between our property and the creek, that is city-owned property. And so that is where the city is going to come in and install the remaining portion of the trail that goes from it. It dead ends at May Avenue behind our project right now. And so the money that we're giving is to basically complete that trail in between May and Ocean. And so that'll be within the city's decisions of how they treat it, how they finish the trail, landscape it. I do think that we discussed, actually, there will be gates on both sides of that. There's gates right now on the other side of it that are shut at night, so that security-wise, that's covered. I will tell you, that our property managers and security will be very active in monitoring that area as well, because we want it to be a safe area, not just for the neighborhood, but our residents as well.
So then, as I understand the drawing, you're actually building right up to that line.
To our property line, correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
For the top part, yeah.
Okay, any other questions before we open it up to public comment? Okay, then we will open up the public comment period. Just to get a sense of how many people here would like to speak tonight, could I get just a show of hands just to get a sense? Okay, wonderful. So if you're planning on speaking here tonight, what I'm going to have people do is line up on the wall to my left, your right, and of course, you do not have to sign in, but it helps us with our minutes if you do. And we'll give, let's say, 2 minutes on this one, Tess. Oh, that's right. What was the name of the, Don Landis? Is Don Landis here? Yeah. Hi. You wanted 5 minutes, correct? Yeah. Okay. I don't think the prop is going to work because it's going to block people's views of what's happening, the people behind you. That said, you're welcome to come up and speak for 5 minutes. So you can't block the people behind you from seeing what's going on. So why don't you prop it up? Okay.
You can see it.
Okay, hi Commissioners. Haven't done this since grade school. So I took it from the architect's plans, page AP3.02, side elevation looking from the creek. They were at 1/16 scale. I did this at 1-inch scale. It's the biggest piece of card, that was the size of my cardboard. So the red dotted line is the property line. And the back of the building, of the new building, the proposed building is, they propose to be 13 inches from the property line. And that goes up 20 feet. And that houses the stacking cars. Then it comes back, I had to scale that, I'm guessing right around 3.5 feet horizontal. And then it goes all the way up. The first dotted line is the roof. The very top line is the top of the parapets. I call it gingerbread, but it still goes up to a total of, it's kind of dark there, but 73 feet, 4 inches from grade. And by grade, I just mean the floor of the parking lot. I think the neighborhood is actually a little lower from what I could tell. The interesting thing is that blue dotted line, and it's actually I was surprised to see it in the architect's plans, that represents what is now, I think, the code, the Ocean Street area plan that we worked for years on. The irony is we worked with the planning department on that. It was their baby, and they did a good job bringing in the community. And now the proposal is to disregard this area of the Ocean Street area plan. So that's my thing. So I just wanted to give you a little, that little figure at the bottom at 1-inch scale, that's a 6-foot person standing in the backyard. The real scale is, I measured this height, it's a little over 11 feet. So just that first 20-foot wall that's right next to the neighbors is twice as high as this ceiling. And you can reach over the fence 13 inches and touch it. So I appreciated all the legal arguments. I'm just kind of going for the visceral and the heart, coming from the heart. So the very top, there's some mechanical stuff that's even up higher, and that thing that is the kind of the elevator or stairs, that's the only thing I cheated on. It's actually further back in the building, but I just moved it here so you could actually see that stairwell sticking up. The little dotted lines, the buildings, they're going for the Art Deco, and I hope the neighbors down there appreciate it, but the little dotted lines represent, the dark black lines go for about 26 feet, and then it steps in 2 feet, goes another 26 feet down by the garage, and then where the apartments are, it goes for 26 feet or so, and then it steps in 3 feet, the word they use is articulation, so it articulates in and out. But you can, this is to give you a feel what it's going to be like in this neighborhood. And that's what I'm coming from. And after all the work that my wife and the neighbors did on the Ocean Street area plan, and to have this just be a dotted line on a plan that's going to go away, it breaks my heart. And like I said, the planning department was very involved in it. So I've been to many council meetings. I've lived here 45 years. I'm in the Central Park neighborhood. And this is the worst I've ever seen an effect on a neighborhood, 13 inches away going up. The other thing I want to say is, the sad irony is that the Ocean Street area plan was a creature of the planning department, and here they are asking for a waiver to eliminate it. I want to read off the website of the Riaz website that has to do with their investors. And quote, this is from their website talking to their investors. We leverage state laws to expedite the permitting process to bypass local control wherever possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Any other speakers, feel free to line up. You'll have up to 2 minutes. And, okay, great. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Eric Rodberg. I own 115 May, which is just outside of the area that abuts. I'm behind the Islander Motel. And what you have in front of you is project conditions of approval for a project in 1999. You might wonder, what does it have to do with this project? Well, it's for the Best Western Hotel expansion, the one on the corner of Ocean and Soquel. I've been dealing with the city on these conditions of approval to try to get them to enforce their own conditions since that time. I've dealt with Leslie Keaty extensively. She's been very helpful, but she doesn't have the power of, a planning department. And the hotel's been out of compliance this whole time. It's the hotel on the north side doesn't look at all like the hotel on the Ocean or Soquel facing sides. It's just a straight wall, no architectural detail, no building articulations, and it's a huge bank of windows. It's a 3-story project, but it's uphill of my property, and so I have a huge bank of windows that look directly into my property, and it sucks. And I've been dealing with, one of the conditions, it's not numbered, but it's on the very last page, and I've circled it. I'm just going to read it into the public record here. The zoning administrator indicated that the only remaining issue is to focus more on the landscaping. One of the things discussed is breaking up the north wall. There's a need to see something more substantial with evergreen trees. The applicants, and et cetera, and they haven't complied, and it's been over 25 years. So I was disappointed in this presentation that they really didn't show elevations on the east side, the side that will affect the May Avenue neighbors. And I think it's really important that whatever conditions you impose, that you have an effective way to enforce them, because I'm really disappointed, and I've worked really hard with the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Lynn Quartz. I actually live just on the other side of the creek at the end of May in Dakota. And many other cities in California, which I don't know if you're aware, but they have been pushing back against the state requirement for densities. These city councils and planning departments include Fairfax, Corona, Marin, Sausalito, Portola Valley, West Covina, Norwalk, and Atherton. Their city councils and planning departments are working to protect and fight for their citizens. And it's one thing to put a 6 or 7 story or more building downtown where there aren't any families living there. It's a totally different thing when you are proposing to put up this size building that butts right up against a residential neighborhood. The renters now get to gaze down at our yards, and they'll look at us from their balconies. The views are gone in my house, and I don't know why, but I did not receive any notifications until the notice about tonight and through some of the diligence of my neighbors. And I have a direct line into this. I spent over $300,000 building an ADU, and it is now going to, right now I have a blue sky, palm trees, and now I'm going to have this behemoth that my renters are going to be staring at. I had to follow the setback laws for the creek. I have a huge swath of land at the back of my lot. I had to follow that I needed 4 parking spaces because I have a small home and an ADU. So I do not understand why we would give any sort of waiver to any other developer when we as citizens here have to comply. These homes were bought with our hard-earned cash. And the property values, no matter what you say, will diminish because of this building in our neighborhood. I really feel like you lack the conviction to fight against greedy developers. We now are going to have 954 units along probably a quarter mile of Ocean Street, including this. They're bordering residential communities. I really don't know how you sleep at night.
Yes, I'm sorry, I got to cut you off. Your time's up.
Okay,
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think it's time for you to say no instead of just red stamping these.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Leslie Wooding. I'm another resident of the Central Park neighbors. And I really applaud what my neighbors are doing right now to stand up against this, because the word that keeps coming to my mind is it's just unconscionable. Really, we are talking about this wall in these people's backyards. And this neighborhood, that most of the houses are over 100 years old. It's a very nice neighborhood, very modest and very, familial neighborhood. And I just would like to see the commissioners push back or at least soften the impact of this so that we aren't impacted in such a brutal way. And, you can speak all the legalese and all the different laws. Of course, some of us actually know the laws, but, what I see is this wall of windows looking down into the neighbors' yards, taking people's sunlights away. I was particularly struck by the developers talking about the shadow on the north side, meaning on the neighbors' houses, but there's no ordinance against that, so no problem there. It's really a problem, I'm sure nobody here would like it if that happened to their house. So I would strongly request there to be a compromise, a softening of this project. They're pushing back the sidewalk to 15 feet in the front. Why can't some of that be done in the back? Why does the neighborhood have to be, so abused? So thank you very much. I would like to see this changed.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hey, my name's Gavin Roth, and I am a housing advocate. Let me just start off by saying I have an opinion on this, that it pretty clearly meets objective standards, and the Commission should approve the project and deny the appeal. But this meeting is part of a bigger battle over the soul of Santa Cruz. Will it become just another playground for the rich, or will we make space for everyone? It's tempting to become pessimistic and resign Santa Cruz to become another Malibu. I've certainly become more pessimistic since I started advocating for housing more than a year ago. However, I haven't lost hope, because I truly believe we can build the housing and infrastructure we need. We can house our homeless neighbors, and we can take climate action together. This project also has real merit. Art House Ocean is a 225-unit mixed-use project with 40 affordable units. It is centrally located with restaurants, parks, and recreation within walking distance. It will be located less than 1.5 mile from 2 major transit stops. In addition, Art House Ocean is also half a mile from both downtown Santa Cruz and the beach. This project is consistent with the city's goal of providing all of its residents livable, walkable, and bikeable places to live. This project's proximity to everyday necessities, jobs, and schools will provide its residents with the ability to walk, bike, and take public transit. By supplying its tenants with the opportunity of low and zero-emission transport, this project will contribute to reducing emissions. This project also helps the environment by limiting development on our forests and greenfield spaces. Finally, apartments also reduce per-person CO2 emissions by up to 20%, further protecting the globe. Art House Ocean is consistent with the city's commitment to reducing emissions and preserving the environment. Finally, Change is hard, but the thing is, people don't come to Santa Cruz because of the architecture. They come because SC is a resilient, compassionate city. By preserving every historical parking lot or non-native tree, we completely miss the point. That to protect the real Santa Cruz, we must build to accommodate everyone. Thank you. Please deny the appeal and progress Santa Cruz forward.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jocelyn Wolf. You've received a letter from me and Gavin in your packet previously. I just wanted to reiterate the law around this project, which is fairly straightforward. All of the state laws that are requiring this type of housing to be put forward and to progress forward and to be moved forward by local government still apply. There are lawsuits at risk if this is not moved forward. I want to let everyone in the room know that this is not something that the Planning Commission, that City Council, that local government really has the opportunity to address in a meaningful way beyond the requirements that have already been put down. I want to say there was an opportunity for local government to have input into projects like this. They spent 50 years saying no. That's why we're in the situation that we are in right now. California is in a housing crisis. I don't have to tell any of you about the unaffordability of the county of Santa Cruz. This is why it looks like this. Maybe in another 50 years after there's been housing, there can be more local control returned again. But this really is where we are. And I am excited about this project. I am excited about the opportunity of people to have affordable and beautiful places to live, places that were very well considered by their architects and planners to be the best that they could be for both the people living in those spaces as well as the community around it to the best of their ability and the economic reality that we're in. I very much appreciate you listening to our comments, and I request that you deny the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Beloved Bolton. I have nothing prepared, but I support the appeal. I live in the Central Park neighborhood, and the complex will be my neighbor. I want to just focus, I agree with what the commentary provided by my neighbors on this, but I just want to focus on the parking and traffic. So there's a lot of talk of the development existing like a half a mile from a transit center. It doesn't mean that that transit system is adequate or, going to be used. Like, people have jobs and they need to drive there. Or they might have a kid and they might need, they might be afraid to use an e-bike or not be able to do that. But anyway, living there and watching our traffic problem as it is on Ocean Street, and this thing about making this the gateway, the entrance to the city. The entrance to our city will be riddled with traffic because we don't do enough to address that currently. And then if this was like the only housing project that they were putting up, but it's not. So all of that's going to be so much worse. And then I don't know if this is part of it, but they said something about restriction of parking passes on May. They have another street that flanks the building. It's called Dakota. And that would merit a restriction on parking passes to not jam it up so bad for the people that live there. It's a real problem. They have a community center that has these, it's great. They have a lot of people. They have events, and it's really beautiful. And it requires a lot of parking. It would be a shame to lose that. It would be a shame to have a parking situation that looks like Trader Joe's downtown or San Francisco. It's, you know what I mean? Whatever assessment they did of the parking and traffic, it looks great. It's not great now, so it can't get it'll only get worse.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I live in the neighborhood off Ocean Street. I'm the wife of the guy who did that. And I'm the one who spent 7 long years of my life working cooperatively with city planning on the Ocean Street plan in line with the general plan to help make it engaging, vibrant, and respectful to the Ocean Street neighborhood residents. City planners came to us because they knew how impactful and harmful all this development along Ocean Street could be to these tiny neighborhoods. They brought us into the process to create something workable. Design standards, neighborhood protections are in this plan to prevent exactly what you're seeing here. This project has zero compatibility with the scale and design of these historic single-family homes that would be devastated by an 80-foot tall skyscraper 13 inches from their property line. It will end livability for these neighbors. This design inflicts maximum pain, loss of privacy, darkness at night, sunshine, loss of heritage trees possibly. Noise, no matter what anybody says, will be more. There'll be a solid blank wall with no screening. There'll be safety issues. Can emergency vehicles really get through when all this extra traffic comes in? Did the planning department even once ask the developer, is there a way to design this to be financially feasible that could allow the neighborhood to maintain some degree of quality of life? Are you 100% certain every rule, base calculation, and waiver the planning department and developer claim is completely accurate and in line with over 100 new housing laws that have been recently enacted? It's time to pause, stop treating neighborhood protections in the Ocean Street area plan like it has no weight or significance. Our neighbors deserve a full examination of these waivers. Each of you is responsible and needs to be fully informed of how the Ocean Street area plan provisions factor into this equation. Please accept this appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. Elaine Johnson, Executive Director of Housing Santa Cruz County. Good to be here this evening. I am here to speak in strong support of this project. We must build homes. We must create communities here. We can't stay the same because nothing stays the same. Our county is changing and we have a responsibility to shape that change in a way that reflects our values of equity, inclusion, and opportunity. Our family members, our friends, our co-workers, they all need a place to call home. This project is about more than just buildings. It's about creating a place where people can live and grow and thrive together. It's about building community. Housing Santa Cruz County is building a relationship with Riaz Capital, and we're encouraged by their willingness to engage with the community, to listen, and to be part of something bigger than just a single development. They're not just coming here to build. They're coming and showing up to be part of the solution. We all know that Santa Cruz is the most expensive place in the nation. We have to move from the constant no to thoughtful, courageous yeses. Yes to housing. Yes to community. Yes to a future where our children and elders and teachers and essential workers can afford to live. Instead of searching for what might be wrong, let's take a moment to recognize what this project gets right, and let's celebrate what it will mean for this county to watch people move in and have a safe, stable place to call home. I invite you to move forward with this project. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ruben Galvan, and I'm a proud representative of the NorCal Carpenters, Local 646. As we build relationships with outside developers, it's key that we encourage them to hire responsible contractors. It's important to support area standard wages, benefits, and apprenticeships programs on Santa Cruz projects. These standards make sure workers get fair pay, healthcare, and opportunities to join apprenticeship programs, helping them build strong, lasting careers. When we set these expectations, we help keep local workers in our community, support families, and reduce the strain on public services. Apprenticeships also create paths for young people and underrepresented groups to enter the trades and find good paying jobs. Responsible contractors don't just take care of their workers, they also deliver higher quality work, create safer jobs, and help projects stay on time and on budget. By supporting fair wages, benefits, and training, we can help Santa Cruz grow in fair and a healthy way, making sure development benefits everyone in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Chair, Commission. My name is Brian Shields, Field Rep, Carpenters Local 646. Get to speak in front of you again tonight, so I appreciate your time on that. I've tracked Ria's development, Ria's Capital for quite a while. They're the bottom of the barrel, absolutely bottom of the barrel. As they're putting things back on the city, they're going to be putting things back on the worker as well. There's not a place that I've seen them work where they've supported the worker, right? Tried to create opportunities for them to live in that community or anything. Every contractor that they've employed has zero commitment to unions, to supporting the workforce, to further the blue collar, right? So, yeah, as it is right now, I absolutely do not support this project. Ria's Capital, and I don't mind, hopefully he watches this, is the bottom of the barrel. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Chair Palamas and members of the commission. My name is Jennifer Merchant. I'm a resident on May Avenue. And my phone just timed out, so give me a second here, I apologize. So as staff alluded to in their presentation, myriad state laws that have sprung up like high rises on the California landscape allow for more scale, density, and height in order to provide much needed housing. I think most of us can agree in many cases that might be a reasonable solution. The project developer, in this case, can further request exceptions to normally required mitigations, community amenities, if the project demonstrates those mitigations provide an untenable financial burden. Just because a property owner can build what is allowed under law does not mean that they always should. Let me quote some things from their website, Ria's Capital. This is how we do it. We look for assets for cash flow generation potential and make improvements that drive net operating income. Honed over 20 years of expertise, our creative unit designs utilize space efficiently, enabling increased density with the property. We also use California's laws to add units, which increases rentable square footage cost efficiently. Another segment says, increased density per square foot. By using efficient design and adding ADUs in some cases, we can increase property NOI by 25%. Great. Make no mistake, this project isn't keeping the 1% out of Santa Cruz, as some of the folks earlier are testifying and requesting. It's inviting them to build up against our residential neighborhoods and in the name of developer ROI and eliminating mitigations created to support our communities by your city council. I ask that the applicant schedule a meeting with their new neighbors and speak willingly and candidly about items of material import that can be adjusted to meet us part way. It's a bastardization of the law and basic reasonableness that would land a 6-story behemoth 1 foot away from a single-story, single-family residence. I'm really wrapping up here. Further, I'm personally concerned that the building as proposed removes sunlight from the adjacent neighborhood during the day and adds exposure to artificial light at night. It jeopardizes the humanity of 2 adjacent neighborhoods. I urge you to strongly suggest that the parties meet in good faith to resolve differences to the extent practical. We know the right choice is not tearing down one community to build another. I urge you to find a resolution we can all live with. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi again. My name is Casey Van Hoovel, and I am the CEO and President of the Monterey Santa Cruz Building and Construction Trades Council. I just want to speak tonight on the developer. The developer has skirted prevailing wage and has skirted also area standard wages. When you build these projects and you skirt those projects and you cheat those workers, do you think they're willing to cheat the process? Often these workers are often the people that need the affordable housing because of their wages getting stolen from them. So why not make sure that we're developing in a good, sensible way? I suggest you seriously look at this appeal and take it into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good evening. I'm not speaking in favor or against the project, but I think what I notice constantly is the community is always turning its focus to the city when they should be turning their focus to your locally elected state assembly member and locally elected state senator, because they are tying the hands of cities to where they don't have the discretion they used to have. And if they do decide to defy a project, then the city is liable for legal fees on a court action. So I think ultimately for those in the public that have concerns, they really need to pay attention to how their locally elected state assembly and state senators vote. And in addition, following legislation that's going on right now, SB 79, which passed 2 committees, would allow, let's say, Delaware, a single family house on Delaware, because there's a bus, could literally have a 6-story development on a single family parcel. So this community is just not really keeping in touch with the legislation that is passing at the state. And by the way, if SB 79 passes, you won't even get to voice an opinion at the city council or at the planning commission because it's by right. So just really important for people to pay attention what's going on in the state laws, because as much as you may love your city, they really don't have the discretion they historically used to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak here tonight on this item? Going once, going twice. Okay, we're going to close the public comment period, and at this point we will invite the appellant back up to rebut or add any additional information. I'm sorry, could you hold on one second? On the rebuttal, what's the typical timeline?
It's chair's
Chairs?
choice.
Do you feel like 10 minutes?
That would be great.
Okay, 10 minutes, please.
So, you've heard from a lot of residents, and you, I guess I want to ask you to do what's in your power. And you know, they've acknowledged that the temporary river transit is 0.4. And they've also acknowledged that it doesn't state if it's temporary or not. Like, the law is open, and the law is open for a specific reason, to allow us to interpret. Please don't make me have to do case law. Eric Rabiel versus Santa Cruz. They use the temporary rivers. You have the right, you have the ability to appeal and force them to prove that they're within a half a mile. 920 Pacific Avenue is 0.6 miles. It's in my statement. Please deny that AB 27 parking requirement removal. There's no to very little open space. Required 23,500 open space. They're offering 2,500. I don't know if we have an issue there. I don't know if there's a public safety issue, but I agree with exhausting us as a city looking at these waivers. Is there a safety issue? I talked to the fire department and I said, there's no setback. Is that an issue? You can't get access. They've got a waiver to no setback to the rear. And the fire department said, well, I've told them that if they put like a 4-foot ramp that we can get in, so we go, where is that in the plans? Where was that discussed with the zoning administrator? Where was the toxics that was found shared in the documents? None of that was furnished, and the zoning administrator approved the project, which is why I'm glad that we have an ability to talk to you, because you have a chance to send it back. And I'm giving you the arguments and the reasons why. Toxic waste was not disclosed in any of the documents. And so we're requesting an initial study and an EIR done. According to CEQA guidelines, a categorical exemption shall not be used for an activity where there is a reasonable possibility that the activity will have a significant impact on the environment. And I give you the case law in my petition for that. So it should go back and you should send that back. You have the backing. I wouldn't be right if we didn't hear from someone from YIMBY. I forget who was the YIMBY person, right? But this is how RIA's Capital does it in their report. They included a letter from YIMBY Law, which is a developer-fronted nonprofit that goes around threatening cities. So you know what? They can threaten us all they want, but if you have the legal backing and you have the ability, you need to exercise that right and push back like my colleagues have said. Are you into affordable housing? Stop making rentals. Yes, it's a nice asset to have. It's a great asset to have in your portfolio. Why is everyone making rentals? Make them to own. Let's get ownership. Let's get low-income ownership. Why are other projects doing 100% affordable housing, 50%? Why is this developer doing the exact minimum and then running 151 FDUs, which don't fall in the zoning ordinance? We don't have any recourse on that, but we have recourses in the other things. So I mentioned, we just gave condition 68, no bus passes. Since they don't want to provide parking, we just waived the condition. We didn't ask any reasons. We said, oh, sure, make it a more affordable, just waive the condition. I don't understand. My solar panels, I'm like, okay, now at 2, 3 p.m., I'm going to be in the dark until 9 o'clock in the summer. So here's my solar. There's so many issues. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I did the appeal. I tried to turn it on Tuesday morning to give you time. I don't know if you've reviewed it. It really asks you to deny the heritage tree removal permit. It asks you to deny the watercourse setback because there's a reasonable possibility of environmental or public safety and health issues. If you deny the watercourse development setback permit, then they don't conform with our city guidelines. If they don't conform with our guidelines because they didn't get that waiver, you cannot give them, you don't have to give them the infill exemption. And then we can do a study and we can do an EIR. And then basically I would say, as everyone said, we need to do everything in our power to support the developers that are here in good faith, that are from our community, that go and meet and change designs and try to come, because they have a long-standing commitment. And they do not. So I implore you to do everything you can to challenge this and other projects. And this happens to be the most egregious and the most dense. And as you can see, they're right up to Islander, they're motel, they're right up to the border, and they're right up to my property. Right, all 4 neighbors. They're doing as dense and as little as they can. And that's not quality of life. 151 units that are 310, 315 square feet for rentals, that I don't know. So I just would implore you, like, I'm in the fight. My whole at a community college is open to everybody can walk in the door. We accept everybody. I don't care who you are, what state you come out. We're going to help educate you. And I hope that you can take this approach. Our city needs to be to defend us more. When I talk to our city, when I talk to, I think they're well-intentioned. I don't know if they're nervous, they're scared, but they are not pushing back. They are erring on the side of our developers. So I guess that's what I have to do. Please deny this project. And let's work harder to get the right kind of projects that come inside with Ocean Street Area Plan, all the hard work our community's done to develop with you a character of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And just given the nature of what's been said here tonight, I'd like to invite the applicant up for a few minutes if there's anything they'd like to address. If not, that's fine too, but and I know you probably haven't prepared anything, but you know, if there's anything you'd like to say, please take that time.
Sure. I'm not going to address the negative comments. I have built a career on building housing and getting people into homes, whether it's rental or sale, and I think it's incredibly important. I also think you cannot stand up and fight for certain rights, but not our basic human right of housing. And so that is what we are doing. We are a quality builder. That's what I will say. I do think that we've addressed a lot of the comments that were said, a lot of the inaccuracies in both the appellant's initial claims as well as the latest, but we're still here. We can answer any questions that come up.
Great. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we're going to return to the commission for comments and any subsequent questions that commissioners may have. Should we just go down the line, or no? Commissioner Thompson?
I guess I'd like to start by requesting a second floor plan, an upper floor plan on the screen. There we go. And I think it would be helpful to show or highlight with a pointer, if sufficient, where the property line is on the floors above the first floor. So to just make it clear that the upper floors are not right on the property line. Okay. And okay, that's sufficient. Thank you.
Any other comments or subsequent questions from commissioners? Staff?
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify some of the project information that was mentioned during the public comments period. I was going to actually show you guys the second floor plan as well, and note that there is more of a setback provided on the second floor. This area here is like the area that has the smallest setback, like 2 feet 11 inches approximately. This further change in plane in is about 8 feet 2 inches, and then this one here is around 4 feet 11
Can you
inches.
point out where the houses? Sorry, Michael.
No. I think we're on the same page. Go ahead.
I was reading your mind. Can you, magnify that again? And can you just also, while you're going through that, show us where the residences are so we can better understand where you're.
And there's been revisions since this has happened as well, correct? Is there any way to show upper floor elevations with the revisions, or?
The upper floor elevations did not change with the revisions. It was only the ground floor that changed. So this is the plan that does not have the revision. The revisions, basically, they flipped this further setback with this modulation here. So they flipped these two areas.
I don't think you were finished.
Now.
Yeah.
I'm so confused.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and finish what you were saying to address comments from the public, and then we'll go to Commissioner McKelvey, and then we'll come back to Commissioner Dan for any questions as well.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted
Vice Chair Dan, excuse me.
I just wanted to clarify, like, the setback requirements shown on the second floor. Like this is the adjacent properties, just to kind of show. I don't think there's a plan that shows exactly where the buildings are on the adjacent property, in connection with the upper floor site, like other upper floor plans, but they do provide like a range of setbacks from floors 2 through 6. And then I also just wanted to note really quickly that staff did include like recommendations in the comment letter to the applicant during the review of the project, recommending that they follow the Ocean Street area plan, but it's not something that we can require, but we do typically include recommendations in review letters, even if it's something we can't legally require.
Excellent. Commissioner McKelvey.
I just wanted to point out that I think the solar study shows best what the relationships are with the other buildings.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see the footprints of the buildings as well as the development of the upper floors on these.
Okay. Did you have any questions, Vice Chair Dan?
I don't think I have any questions now.
Okay. Commissioner Kelly?
I actually do have one question.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
This is actually more of a question for staff. So I can't remember if it was the applicant or in your staff presentation, you had talked about requesting greater commercial space. Actually, I think it was the project architect from Workbench mentioned that you requested greater commercial spaces. And so I was kind of wondering, since it does seem like there is a little bit of room to negotiate with the developer, why would the city request that as opposed to maybe asking them to provide more outdoor amenity space or personal space for the people who might live there, or a bigger setback from the property lines for the neighborhood? Why is commercial space always chosen? We've got so much commercial space. The last Ocean Street project we approved was actually a beautiful project. It didn't have anybody opposing it, really. The union folks didn't really say anything bad about the developer on that one. And that one had a lot of ground for commercial, and we have a lot of commercial on Ocean. So how does that work when you guys are making those requests and negotiating with the developer and asks for them?
So thank you for your question. So with regards to that, essentially, there are a lot of objective design standards regarding uses for active frontage in our objective design standards. Those uses for active frontage are pertaining to how commercial spaces are designed. So for example, in the community commercial zone district, we require that at least 50% of the frontage of the project is along the ground floor is dedicated to uses for active frontage, so commercial spaces. There's a lot of policies in the general plan as well as the Ocean Street area plan that encourages mixed-use developments, which includes commercial spaces, in order to encourage more walkability. When we have more commercial spaces in these types of like high-density projects, people are not driving as much. They're able to walk and bike to kind of meet their needs. And so that's why we're trying to further the policies in the general plan and the Ocean Street area plan, as well as the CC zone district, of recommending and strongly encouraging that the applicant meet our uses for active frontage requirements. The commercial space area that they were previously proposing did not meet our requirements, so they would have they were not in compliance with our objective design standards. So we were strongly encouraging that they meet our objective design standards, as well as like other recommendations that we've also asked them to do, which is like improving the rear facade, recommending that they follow the Ocean Street area plan policies as well. So we provided more recommendations than just the increase of the commercial space.
Yeah, I guess now that the laws have shifted underneath us, I guess I would question whether or not we should use that ability to negotiate for other things in projects as opposed to commercial, that, knowing that we have limited ability to make any design changes with or unit size, height, setbacks, whatever, that often we get projects that maybe, don't have the level of amenities that they would have if we had the ability to dictate that they put those amenities in. Since they can ask for concessions and waivers, they can get out of our objective standards and our code requirements for those to make the building more livable for the people who will live there, but then also for the people who live around the building. And since, because of state law, we don't really have the ability to tell the developer to lower the height, to have a greater setback from the neighbors, to reduce shading, all of that, whether or not if we should use that limited negotiation to argue for, commercial space rather than space for the people who will live there in the building or other things. It's just something else to think about. Obviously, this isn't something we can deal with right now, but it just came up in, when I was listening to the developer, that maybe we should rethink how what we ask for.
Thank you. I just want to add, in addition to the things that we can ask for, parking is on that list also. And so, we've been seeing that as kind of offering this balance as well. Like, you're going to provide this commercial space that is going to be an amenity space, as you're saying, to the residents who are living there, but also to the community, and in a space where, some developments might be providing ample parking, other developments aren't and aren't required to. And so, having that commercial space is what's gonna activate the walkability. Without that commercial space, that takes away a service or retail use or something that's in close proximity, making it more difficult to get around. So yeah, we're trying to balance that as well.
And I'll just add, as Serena sort of alluded to, we try to negotiate on every development standard we can. We're very upfront. I will say that the community outreach policy that the city council adopted in 2018 or so has a component that requires these community meetings early on in the process. And the reason behind that is to allow community input early on before these projects are fully fleshed out and get to a body like yours. We've had surprisingly good success with these developments, listening to the community early. And it doesn't happen on every project, but the other project just up Ocean had quite a few.
That was the lodestar that all developers should follow.
Yeah, the senior housing facility on Eucalyptus, same thing. We've had a surprisingly positive response from developers because of that requirement early on. The applicants haven't spent that much money yet and do have a little bit more flexibility at that point in the process.
Thank you for that.
Okay, comments, questions?
I'm going to jump in here and make some comments and actually a motion. If we could have the one of the floor plans back up on the screen here. I'm a real advocate for this kind of housing as an important part of what we have as our housing supply in Santa Cruz, and that includes the small units. Our architectural firm did a lot of work with small units 40 years ago, and when it was a radical notion. So I think that generally speaking, that is an important part of our housing mix. It's even though that is a large component of the projects we see these days, it is it actually reflects the mix of household types that we have in our city. Our own census information tells us that we need these small units because that's the nature of our households. So I think projects like this are an important part of meeting our housing needs as a community. And so I am inclined to support them when they come to us. with some qualifications. One is that these small dwelling units typically only have one wall of the unit that actually faces the outdoors. All the windows that the unit has are often on one wall. And having been a student of urban housing for over 50 years now, there were rules 50 years ago, 100 years ago, about just kind of what's a minimum standard. And my sense is that an apartment should have windows on a wall that has at least 5 feet of space between it and the property line. And I think that's just kind of a basic notion. In most cities, it's actually a public safety requirement. That's how the fire personnel can get to pluck somebody out of a burning building. So I don't think it's asking too much to have that kind of minimum setback. So I would suggest that that be a condition to this. I also think that there's an element for even important housing projects like this to include a notion of a part of the responsibility of good architecture is the notion of a gift to the street. And in this case, I think it's a gift to the creek that is on my mind. I would want the building to, in fact, be a pleasant wall, if you will, to the public space that is the creek. And so I don't have anything specific in mind, but the fact that there would be large portions of it, in fact, on the ground floor, all of it, without any softening to the creek is a missed opportunity. So I would like to see the building provide a gift to the street along the creek there. I know that the city has room there to landscape between the channel and the property line, but it strikes me that it would be worthwhile to try and have the building itself be a good neighbor to this public space. With that said, I think that the other aspects of the project are, in fact, the kinds of housing supply that we need to have to meet our responsibilities to house our citizens. And so I would, with those comments, move to approve it.
Do you mean deny the appeal or?
Yes, that's right.
Yes? Okay, we got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Thompson. I will second. I had a couple comments and a couple questions. The first, I'll start with questions. Can we go back to the shadow, the solar study page? I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get a sense of how this is going to go. Okay. So I'm trying to double up on the Google Maps too, because there does seem to be some solar owners across the street from the creek there that may be impacted. If I'm looking at the map right, I don't know how current this is. I'm just trying to get a sense of that. Yeah, it looks like 212 Dakota across the street from the creek there, like on the December, or on winter solstice, 3 p.m. Looks like they're going to get hit a little bit with the solar. There's also 129 that looks like it has some solar as well. Okay, that looks like everything's all shifted around. Okay. All right. wasn't really a question. It was just more of like further investigation. Yeah, just to comment on that, I do think that builders, if they're coming in and building next to, a low density residential neighborhood like this, that's going to impact people's solar panels, I think that there needs to be some compensation there. And in the event that solar generation is seriously impacted, I'm not really sure how to wordsmith this, but I do think there should be some contact between the developer and homeowners with solar panels before finaling, such that you can have some idea of the impact once the thing is actually built, in terms of what that's going to do. Now, I know that, there's going to be different impacts in the winter than, say, in the summer, and so there's definitely some issues there, but I would, I guess it's a friendly amendment. Friendly amendment would simply be that before finaling the permit after construction is complete, that the developer works with neighbors with solar panels to determine whether energy generation for them is going to be severely impacted, and if so, to come to some sort of an agreement on compensation up to the cost of the installation of the solar panels, possibly. Yeah.
Can we do that?
Chair, thank you. So you could require these things. However, it would be advisable to maybe address the applicant and see if they are willing to make these changes. The setback to the rear on the upper floors, working with the neighbors on solar panels, providing the wall to the street. They may be amenable to those things, and then I think that would be probably the advisable action at this point.
Yeah, I'd recommend that, because we really don't have an objective standard around something like you're suggesting. So I think the best course would be to talk to the applicant about their willingness. I think as far as the 5-foot setback goes on Mr. Thompson's suggestion, most of those units have that. Is that right, Rena? I think one of the units has a little notch that might project into it, but between the 4-foot fire access from the podium and above, and then the 1-foot setback down below, that 5 feet for the most part's being achieved.
Yeah, I'm reassured by that.
And just to be clear, in terms of what options we have as a commission, essentially we can't condition something that would make a project financially infeasible, correct?
Right, and that doesn't have an objective standard.
Got it. Okay, so, okay,
That's
gotcha.
another important.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, then we're kind of at an impasse until we talk to our applicant. Come on up. How do those two conditions sound?
Well, the 5 foot, we are 5 foot from any property line to any window. I'll point out too, it's been my goal since I started Riaz Capital to get the biggest windows into these spaces as we can. So I can send some photos. We have accomplished that in a lot of ways. I think, everything on Ocean Street, where there's a balcony, we get that, full slider. So that helps a lot of it as well. In terms of softening along the creek, I do not think that that is a problem at all. I think we can work on some of the architectural forms, and something we have done very successful is murals, and I could see along that base doing some murals. Can't entirely remember, but I believe we do have some windows along the front in the amenity spaces, so those will kind of open up to the creek as well. In terms of the solar, I think we've done a fair amount of research to understand where that hits. I think it's understanding different people's solar contracts, whether it's leased, whether it's owned, whether it's an energy impact. So I think it's definitely a conversation we can have with any of those homeowners that are impacted. But I think we need to look more into that rather than agreeing to fully buy them out of a contract.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Okay. Then what we can do is send that, or maybe we can push that to council on a recommendation. Just, I understand that this is an appeal and this stops here, but I'm assuming that this is going to be appealed whatever we do here tonight. So can we send that on? I'm sorry, Vice Chair.
You can make a second motion after you can make one motion about the appeal, and then you can make a second motion to recommend to council something.
Well, I can't make motions at all.
Or somebody can,
Right.
I will.
So,
Yeah, and it's not a guarantee this is going to council on appeal.
Sure.
So I would recommend that you come up with maybe some alternative language around what the applicants agreed to as a condition.
okay. Ooh, on the spot.
I can help you.
I need help. So, yes. Why don't you take a crack?
Are we trying to attach this to the motion made? Or you want?
Yes. So,
So I would say you can make a friendly amendment that requests that the developer research the solar impacts to the neighbors and enters into good faith negotiations with those neighbors to address any loss of solar power and properly compensate those neighbors for any loss of solar. Or something like that.
I think she's gonna ask you to repeat it.
I don't know if I can, I just made that up.
I was going to ask if you could
Well,
research.
I didn't even say prior to finalizing the building permit. The applicant agrees to negotiate in good faith with neighbors who have solar to compensate those neighbors for any loss of solar and costs associated with that.
do you want to?
I think we did just want to make sure it is current solar owners, not future.
Okay.
And then
Who have solar as of today.
I just want to make sure that obviously then also if there's impacts, I was out there today, I think some of the neighbors, the trees that we're trying to save are actually blocking some of the solar at certain times anyway. So it is going to take a fair amount to determine what the impact actually is.
Agreed.
Sure.
But we could say, and as associated with the shadow study in the packet. Or we could reference the shadow study as being the guiding document to determine which neighbors are going to be shaded.
So just for clarification, both the applicant and the commission, I mean, it sounds like the wording that you've recommended does require compensation.
Well, it just says negotiate in good faith. I know we can't require anything.
Okay. Okay.
Doesn't dictate determine, it's just strongly encouraging.
I think good faith leaves enough leeway. It's not a legal requirement, but we do think that if somebody has put solar on their house and you come along and build this building and it knocks out their solar, that's a huge financial loss for them, right? And so we want you to be fair with them. And that's what the intention is here. Right.
And we did this on a similar, actually a workbench, the food bin application, which was also right up to the property line and completely shaded somebody's long-standing solar system.
Great. So that's my friendly amendment. Will you accept?
That's acceptable to me, and I'm reassured that the minimum setback to the units is 5 feet, and so we don't need to cloud the motion with that notion.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Just a couple other things I wanted to address. I think I got my questions answered, but just a couple comments on what was it? Okay, flexible density units. So staff can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding, and this just goes into the whole rental and ownership unit thing, flexible density units were created because nobody was building the small ownership units, right, that were for sale. Correct? I mean, among other reasons, but that's one of them.
Yep, that was one of them, right?
Okay. Excellent. And then the other thing I just wanted to bring up is that, every time projects like this happen, and we can understand that going next to a single family neighborhood, this is going to be a big change. And I am sympathetic to those changes and the impacts that that's going to have on, a potential or on a neighborhood, right, with a potential project that gets proposed. And, I was looking at this today. A one-bedroom affordable unit, somebody making $111,000 is considered low income at this point. And part of the reason for that is what we have done in the past around housing policy. And we've made quite a mess, and it's not just us, it's a lot of different places. But I think that if that's not indicative of the level of urgency that we have around housing, I don't know what is. And so that would just be my comment on that. Other than that, I'm looking forward to making this project as good as we possibly can from our chairs right here and denying the appeal. So that's where I'm at on this. Any other comments from commissioners? Yeah, Commissioner McKelvey.
I know we have a motion on the floor, so I don't know how much scope we have to discuss this, but it seems a little blurry about, I know that it's a plan that the city is going to develop for access along the creek. And I'm just wondering, is there any discussion about how much public access is available in that location? Or I'm talking about pedestrians, bicycles, just along the creek, because I think it was stated that it dead ends at May Avenue and it doesn't. And so I'm just wondering.
Yeah, the intention of us working with a developer to receive funds to improve that area would be to continue the path that exists north of May, that continues up to Water Street, continue that treatment down to Ocean. And so you'd still be able to bike and walk on that new path there.
People mentioned gates, though, and I'm just wondering kind of who's going to control that, if it may not be known yet, but it's something that I would like to advocate for, that the public access is preserved as much as possible.
I believe those gates today are controlled by our Parks and Rec department, just to ensure safe access and who's in there currently. So we'd continue that treatment on this section of the path as well.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to make one more comment.
No, sorry. Public comment is over. Thank you.
I just want to make one more brief comment.
Yes, you can talk.
Just to articulate what we're doing here. And so when you have an appeal, the role of the Planning Commission isn't to give a thumbs up or thumbs down on the project. It's really to determine whether or not the zoning administrator followed the law and did anything incorrect in hearing this item. So that's really what we're doing here. It's not a thumbs up or thumbs down on the project. It's only determining whether or not the ZA did their job correctly. So I just want to let the neighbors know, I truly do understand the emotion behind this. It's devastating to lose sunshine and to have a big building where you had a view. I just want to let you know I recognize that. I hear you. And I see you and I empathize with you. I do also believe that there are ways to design projects and build housing that has a less impact on the neighbors, and I wish that were the case with this project, that we could have a wonderful project, a great project that also was less impactful for the neighbors. But I just need to point out that every single thing that was pointed out that you didn't like about this project is allowed under state law, and there's nothing local government can do about it. That is, the state has taken control over that, and the speaker who said such at the very end was 100% correct, as was the speaker who spoke right before Gavin spoke. So I just wanted to make that point, just so we're all clear, because sometimes in these appeals, we can get caught up in the project and lose sight of actually what our role actually is here.
Good comments. Okay, any other comments, questions?
Thanks, Chair. Just before you vote, if you could take a look at that condition that Rena jotted down, number 58. I don't know if you have any.
That's great. What's your opinion? We want to make sure we can build this whole project. Could you speak to the mic, because we're recording this? Thank you.
We would just like, it's a fairly large amount of money to build the project, and we would like to make sure that we're complying with all the conditions prior to building the full thing.
Yeah, Commissioner
I think
McKelvey.
it should say prior to issuance of building permits.
But that's not the solar one, right? That's the softening of the north elevation.
Yes.
So the other solar one that was 70 something, 72. So you're suggesting prior to issuing the building permit rather than
Correct.
finaling?
Correct, yeah.
How do you feel about that, Commissioner Thompson?
Okay with it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Okay, great. Okay, I don't think there's any more questions or comments from commissioners. Okay, then we will have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Dan,
Yes.
Kelly,
Aye.
McKelvey,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Chair Polhemus.
Yes. The item passes unanimously. Or, I'm sorry, I'll say that a different way. The Planning Commission has voted to deny the appeal unanimously. Okay. Okay, that is item number 4. We got one more item on our agenda, which is general business. Consideration of bylaw changes related to the start of the meeting time for the Planning Commission, which currently is 7 p.m. I don't think we have a staff presentation, but is
we
there
don't
anything
have-
staff needs to add?
Yeah, thank you. We don't have a staff presentation. I know in your packet, the changes were for a start time of 6:30. I don't believe that you have had an opportunity to sort of discuss among yourselves what time would be, most appropriate or what you would most desire. We would recommend a slight change in the wording that would allow some flexibility. Let's say if we wanted to start at 5, or if there was something conflicting, or if you wanted to start later, maybe at 7. So we would recommend language such as the meetings shall be in the evening, beginning no earlier than 5 p.m. And that would give us a range. And then maybe you guys could talk about a standard time that we would all, maybe we plan to have a standard time a start time of 6. But then we have some flex time between 5 and 7, should that be needed.
I'll also mention that this will take an amendment to your bylaws, which requires approval by the council. And then in order to get it to the council, we need a majority of the commission, not a majority of the quorum here tonight. So, if you wanted to continue it to allow everyone to discuss it, that would be fine too. But I just wanted to alert you that there's a required vote.
So we need 4 votes in the affirmative.
That's right.
The teacher can do the math. That's
I
good.
can't. I do have toes. All 10 of them.
I would have kicked her under the table.
Okay, so this is a little bit more loosey-goosey than I thought it was going to be. Okay. Do we have any language as like a starting point, or do we maybe want to discuss this first, or?
There is language, although I don't think my computer is connected. I think there is an attachment to the agenda.
Yes, page 8 of your bylaws, which is the attachment.
Yeah, I didn't have that.
I'm also having connectivity things happening right now, so I don't know if that's the internet or not, but.
And it should be online.
I'll just take
there we go.
ownership of this. This was my suggestion, I think, and Tim Marie's, and I think originally I suggested 6, but I really, if that doesn't work for folks, or we want to keep it the same, I'm really amenable to whatever works for everybody. I'm not trying to, so.
Yeah, Commissioner McKelvey.
I like the idea of it being somewhat flexible, given that our agendas expand and contract, and we can expect more public commentary on one item than maybe on another, depending on the agenda. So I think 6 o'clock is a great target, and maybe we could build in some flexibility. My only concern, which I stated before, is that I don't want to make it difficult for people to get here and testify. So
That's kind of exactly how I feel on like a 5 o'clock start. I feel like that's not workable in terms of public access. So I think that, and this is just my feeling, I think 6 o'clock is probably the earliest we want to start. But I also am not against flexibility. That's just my feeling on it.
I like 7 o'clock.
You know,
I'm just going to say, I like 7 o'clock. I like to have dinner before I do this.
I like 7 and I mean, 7 is fine. There's nothing wrong with 7. I'm not married to it, I guess is what I would say, but yeah.
Yeah, and if the majority wants to keep it at 7, that's fine. It's not, I'm not going to die on the hill. I just, yeah. I mean, so today we would be done, and, you know, it's almost 10. I don't know, yeah.
So do we need to make a motion?
I would
of
just
some
say,
kind,
I was
or-
going to restate, I can't make motions, so
Well,
if
so we have 7. Carolyn, what do you think?
With the 3 little ones, I would love to be able to start 6 so I can get to bed at a reasonable time, but it's not as ideal, unfortunately. 7's more doable to get everything done. Yeah, to get everything I need to done before getting here.
Yeah, okay.
So the language could still be changed to allow for flexibility with the, you know, idea that we will still meet at 7, if that's what the commission wants to do. But then maybe we have a controversial appeal and everyone agrees, like, let's start earlier. And then for that particular project, we could discuss starting earlier, or the chair, I guess, would decide.
I like that idea.
If that's possible, it seems like it would solve a lot of problems.
Do we have to do the language that would include what would be a controversial agenda item?
Yeah, there would need to be some language. So, I mean, we could say a standing 7 o'clock start time with the option to start as early as 6 in certain circumstances or something like that.
Based on the size of the agenda or something
Yeah,
along
the
that line.
anticipated length of the meeting really is what it is.
The council does that regularly. They start meetings at 5:30 when they have a tough item.
What's their language?
Had to ask.
Is that in the?
I'm sure it would be in the council handbook. They have the same type of structure.
Okay, so then if that language was put in there specifically, then if there was, I think what we were considering was if there was some conflicting event or other meeting that people wanted to attend, like to maybe not specify that it's only for a long agenda, that we could just use our discretion about that. And not us, but you as a commission could use your discretion.
Could just write in if Mike thinks so, or Mike says so.
Well, I'm also just thinking about a time when the commission was a little bit more divisive, I guess you could say, and perhaps the start time could also be used and weaponized, which is one thing that I'm thinking about now. That said, I don't think my feelings have changed, but just something to bring up.
Let's just keep it at 7. You know, I have early mornings and I don't go to bed after these meetings for hours. So that's why I was like, let's change these. But it sounds like 7 works best for everyone, so. And yeah,
I think we can do, and I can't make this motion, but we have our standing 7 o'clock time with an option to start as early as 6. That's as broad as it gets. If we wanted to do something like that, that's something that, no conditions on when we can do it, just we can do this.
A nominal starting time.
So the meeting shall be in the evening, beginning no earlier than 6 p.m. And then the rest of the language would stay the same. But what we would convey to the city council is that the meetings are going to continue to be at 7 unless a special.
I think that's important to be in there too, is, a regular starting time of 7 p.m. with an option to start earlier. And also, who's going to initiate if we use 6 or 7? Would that be staff initiated or would that be commission initiated?
I would suggest staff look at the agenda and make a recommendation to the chair before the meeting.
Yeah, that sounds good.
To answer your question about the council, it's the mayor who decides the sessions.
Okay, so that mirrors pretty closely, yeah. So we're really just going to council and saying, can we do what you guys do? Okay. I do think we need to, somebody needs to move and second, and then we need to vote.
So moved.
Cheater.
I'll second. All right.
Did you catch that?
Questions,
Sure,
comments?
got
Same, just to do due diligence, can we get are you typing the language or?
That is not editable.
Okay.
I can read something out if that's,
Yeah,
if we
that would
caught
start
it.
at 6
Yeah,
with-
the meetings will start at 7 with the option to start at 6 p.m. by recommendation of planning staff to the chair and determined by the chair.
And then presented at the general notes at the end of.
And then it would be listed on our agenda and sent to us, and I guess we just have to read our agendas really closely.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay. Yeah, okay. I guess let's have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Dan?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
McKelvey?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Alhamis?
Yes. Okay, that passes unanimously. Are there any informational items from staff?
Just so we don't have any items currently for your 5:15 meeting, the next meeting. So there's a good chance that'll be canceled. Coming up in June, we've got a mixed-use project. This is June 5th on North Pacific Avenue. And then we might have some code amendments involving the downtown, and this comes out of a package of recommendations that the council, or direction that the council gave regarding some of the empty storefronts that we have downtown. So we're looking at things like extending use permits and maybe streamlining some of the uses down there. So that'll either be going on the 5th or the 19th. That's what you have before you.
And where was the project again? I'm sorry.
On North Pacific?
North Pacific. Okay, great. Okay, there are no subcommittee or advisory body oral reports, and the only items that got referred to our future agenda were approval of the minutes from April 3rd and April 17th, which hopefully we'll have next time around. And that said, we will adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I don't know if they'll be adopted.